We're a little bit before it's start time. We'll give folks a few minutes, usually till about 2 or 3 after, and then we'll get going. Give it about another minute here, and then we'll get going. Okay, there we go. We are at 7:02. We should get things rolling for the folks that were here on time. Anybody who comes along shortly, we'll let them in and they can join in the fun. Um, I always like to start by welcoming everybody who's here with us on the Zoom call. Um, I'm going to do our little disclaimer, which is all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. All right. Again, like I just said, welcome to everybody who's here on the call with me. My name is Scott Weldon. I'm the executive director of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, as many of you know us as NORML. Um, Also, welcome to everybody, anybody who might be watching on our YouTube live stream. And welcome to anybody who might be watching this as a recording later on down the road. Mentioning YouTube, I do want to point out that we are not monitoring the comment section on the YouTube as we're streaming live. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down in the comment section below. When YouTube's finishing rendering, we will go and visit the video there and try and address any of your questions, comments, and concerns. Let me go ahead and close my little disclaimer there. And see what else I got handy here so I know what I got to do. All right, as I mentioned, my name's Scott Weldon, the Executive Director of South Carolina NORML. This is our monthly open public meeting. Hello to John Jones. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. We do these monthly meetings on the third Tuesday of every month. What we try and cover on these meetings are kind of a overview of our agenda, and I'll run through that real quick. Actually, I'll drop it down into the chat just because copy and paste, I learned how to do that one day. There we go. We'll talk real briefly, well, as briefly as I can make it anyway, on national legislative news. There is some big news that came out in the past week, so we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. State legislative news, as many of you may know, we are in the home session. Basically, the active session of legislation is done for the year. They won't be reconvening until January of 2022. So there's not a lot to talk about. We'll recap where the Compassionate Care Act is and such like that. We'll touch on chapter business. We have nobody on board to do committee reports at this point, so I'll just kind of try and give an overview of some of those activities and our upcoming events. So that's our agenda for tonight. We will get started by dropping another link down into the chat here. This is from National NORML. This is a link I drop in quite often to you all. This is the action page, take action page on NORML National. I love to direct people over here because this is a great page to highlight what's going on, not only nationally, but at state levels as well. Depending on the states, there's more going on than others. I am going to real quick share that screen with you just to kind of give you a breakdown on how that page lays out. All right, you should be able to see my share screen now. As you'll see, we're on norml.org/act, ACT. Takes us to the Take Action page. On the very top are our federal priorities. Excuse me. And usually it's the top 5 that are up there. And the reason I'm pointing this out, because then just below the federal priorities, you will see the state graphic of the state map. You can go on here and click on, you'll see 10 bills in South Carolina, 9 bills in Georgia. Click on that and you're going to get a pop-up. And we'll give it a little bit of a overview of those, plus buttons to go and click into see details. So a good example here, we have S-150. This is a medical access issue. Here's a link to email your lawmakers about supporting the Senate Bill S-150. Favorable with amendment, medical affairs. Yeah, it moved out of the federal, the Medical Affairs Committee. I'm assuming that's what that's referring to. But anyway, great little page here. I'm going to go back to that main page. Went in the wrong direction. There we go. So anyway, those federal priorities up at the top, and those we'll go over in just a couple of moments. Down below, again, we'll kind of briefly touch on state. They break it down here at National on 2021 state legislation for legalization specific, decriminalization specific. You'll note there's nothing mentioned here about South Carolina's decrim bills because they're doing nothing. They're not in the news. Basically, what happens, they get assigned to committee, um, and they languish there, never really being acknowledged by the committee chair, and so they don't get moved forward. Um, Expungement, other priorities, but the reason I'm kind of going through is it does bring us down to another section down here of other federal priorities. I kind of wish it was up toward the top, um, because some of this is actually really important, um, kind of stuff. Um, I'm going to actually pop open another window now that I'm thinking about it. All right. So let me click back to my tabs up top here. I'm going to move this one down the line, and I'm going to scroll this page back up. Not real glamorous, but the appropriations is a priority bill. I'm not sure if it was this one. I believe this is the one that Justin Streckel, our national um, political director, sort of has been calling the gateway bill, a little playoff on the gateway drug analogy. Um, Tell Congress, don't use your taxpayer dollars to shut down legalization. And you can kind of see this here. Again, if you're at that page, you can click on the link. But basically, what this is doing is giving you an opportunity to click and act on, letting Congress know that um, you don't want your federal tax dollars used at the state level and where states have already legalized, whether it's for recreational or medical purposes, for enforcing federal law. Um, I'm going to back out of that one real quick. Or actually, just move on that. The big news this past week. Well, let me back up one. Um, this next one here, the House um, has reintroduced the MORE Act pretty much the way it was last cycle. I don't believe there's been any real major changes in that. And down in other federal priorities, there's probably also there is um, another bill to decriminal or to deschedule, sponsored by, oh boy, I'm blanking on names now, by a Republican legislator, but it does not include any of the like social equities, the expungement, that kind of stuff. So we are more in favor of the MORE Act and or the new one we'll talk about shortly, the Cannabis Administration and Organization Act, I believe is the correct name for it. But anyway, this is the House version of it. If you click on the normal.org/act/federal support the Historic MORE Act, you can again contact your House legislators, asking them to sign on to what is known as Bill HR 3617 in its reintroduction. Um, I'm not clicking this link because there's a better link. But if you click on this link on the Senate proposal to end marijuana criminalization, has been released for comment. Actually, I will click on the link real quick for you just to show you that it's talking about coming soon, if I remember the correct link. Yeah, coming soon, bill to end. And that bill is actually here. I'm going to go click on this other link. Boom. Wrong one. There we go. Senate leader unveils a long-awaited marijuana descheduling plan. The link, as you'll see, is from the NORML blog. It's basically on the 14th, where this came out about 6 days ago. Last Wednesday was the announcement of the, well, let me see if they actually gave it. Here's the name: Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. It will not have a number yet. This is one thing that it was kind of new to me, but for the most part, it's been unveiled as a draft. Um, they are looking for input. right down here, if you'll take notice. The draft legislation titled the Cannabis Act, Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act, makes numerous changes to federal law, marijuana laws, while providing deference to states' cannabis policies. Um, the reason I want to highlight that this is a draft is because I've already been seeing some comments um, on our social media talking about things like the taxes on it. Um, let me see if I can quick find. When I'm in share mode, I have trouble finding things. The chat mode again. Here we go. I'm going to drop another link in the chat here. This is to a uh, overview of the legislation. And when I say it's an overview, it's a 30-page overview of the legislation. Second link I'm going to copy and paste in here for you is the full version, 163 pages. So if you guys got like unable to sleep or something at night, um, those two links will give you a lot more detail on this draft of legislation. Let me go ahead and get off of the screen and see if I can move chat. There we go. All righty. What I want to do is go back to the announcement from last Wednesday real quick. I'll click on this one. They unveil the long-awaited plan. Gave you the votes for the legislation, the links for it, and again, you'll see there's a link here on the blog post. Um, the other link I want you to have, and I don't know if it's on the blog post here yet or not. I do not see it. Um, but is this one here? Let me drop it in the chat again. There is an open comment period on this Schumer Booker Wyden proposal. And notice how it says proposal because it has not been introduced as full legislation yet. I guess is my understanding of it as a draft being introduced as a draft. There is room for change. Um, there is, I think, some language in there that mentions drug testing, marijuana drug testing. So this second link that I've just shared with you, am I still on share? I am. Um, takes you to this normal post. This is not on the blog. This is under the take action. So let me go back and show you where that is on the take action. Fifth line down under federal priorities. What do you think about the Schumer Booker Wyden proposal? Tell NORML this information is being put together and shared with our legislators, the drafters of this legislation. There's already been thousands of responses to this. Excuse me again, tickle in the throat. Justin set it up a little bit. I think it's a pretty nice setup. He's got a number of radio buttons that you can go through and click. You know, good example. Top question: how important is it to you that expungement be included in the final package? Top button: no expungement, no deal. Second button: very important. Third button: somewhat important. Fourth button: not important at all. Fifth button: don't know. Next questions with same answers on it. How important is it to you that federal government end discriminatory metabolic I'm sorry, metabolic THC pre-employment random drug testing? Now this is drug testing that's mandated like by the Department of Transportation, by the government, not because what happens is once the government does it, and private businesses tend to follow. That's what happened when they implemented the drug testing to start with. Um, no testing, no deal, nor testing or no deal. Let me rephrase that. Very important, somewhat important, not important at all, don't know. Another one with those same questions, the first three of those same answers. How important is interstate commerce to you? Um, I'm assuming that includes like mail order. Can I mail order something in from another state? because my state doesn't produce such and such a product at this time. Again, no interstate cannabis, no deal, or very important, or somewhat important, or not important at all, or don't know. Last radio button question was, um, who should handle most of the regulations? State, federal government, or a shared jurisdiction similar to alcohol between the two? And then there are three fill in the blank, or not necessarily fill in the blank, but what do they call them? Essay type questions um, that we want to indicate to either Justin as he goes through these, or legislators that are pushing this basically are lobbyists like Justin. Fight for, fight against, other comment. So good example is if somebody says we really need to fight for keeping the taxes low, and we need to fight against limited licensing, divvied out only to the good old boys kind of thing. Um, so that is some of the input that you can easily, quickly do um, through NORML's posts. NORML, Justin is still, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the share for a moment. There you go. Justin is still working on the rebuttal or the reply to the introduction and the announcement of this new legislation. He figures that's going to take probably another 2 weeks or so to finish drafting and to publish that. But that is again one of the big pieces of legislation that came out just in this past week. Um, Good news. So that is House version of the MORE Act, Senate version of what used to be the MORE Act, now the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. That other, let's see if I could find it. Scroll down here real quick. Um, the Republican bill to repeal marijuana prohibition. That is, there we go. Representatives David Joyce and Don Young introduced H.R. 3105. Again, that is strictly a descheduling with none of the social equities and reparative justice um, that did the MORE Act and the CAO Act. We'll call it the CAO Act. It's easier to say. Have in there. Let me just real quick see if there's any comments here at the moment. Any questions or comments, concerns about the CAO Act or any of this other federal legislation at the moment? Alrighty. I will again just sort of put it out there to please go to, which link am I on? My page didn't refresh right, I don't think. I'm showing the wrong link here. Let me go ahead and refresh. There it is. Please go out and basically let Justin let us know, let our Senate legislators know, sponsors of this bill, what you think about it. Like I say, I have not even gotten through the 30-pager yet. I will drop another link here into the chat if you want to save this one for later. This was Justin on last night. He does Marijuana Mondays, federal legislation, um, mostly every Monday at about 5 p.m. I was on Facebook Live. So here's the recording of that from last night. He'll give you again a good overview of what's going on with these new bills. And me, I find it easier to kind of sit and watch through the videos than read the 30-page brief or the 163-page actual bill. I just I read a paragraph or two and go, oh, look, a squirrel. So, shiny objects, things like that. Okay, share those, save those links. I will probably have to go back when I go to YouTube and repost these links because I know our chat links here do not save um, to the YouTube chats. All right, let me see where else I was here real quick. I mentioned briefly, I think, the support for the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, the Safe Banking Act. Um, that legislation passed the House on April 19th of this year with a vote of 321 to 101 with the support of 100% of voting Democrats and 51% of voting Republicans. So I'm assuming that is now to pass the House. It's now in the Senate. Safe Banking Act. Important info as we move forward. All right. I'm just going to go back and look at Nationals priority list on federals again. I'm skipping a few, which I have a tendency to do. Uh, in those priorities, there's also one to contact Biden, follow through with your commitment to expunge marijuana records. Uh, Again, I'm going to urge you all, if you haven't gone out in the past month, go out, hit all these buttons, post all these to your legislators. If you've done it last month, do it again this month. It's important to kind of just keep on them, keep reminding them. Um, I think they may be a little bit like me too. They see a shiny object, and actually, they probably see money somewhere coming from some pharmaceutical company, and they get distracted on marijuana policy. So go out and remind them on all those top five at the top, and let me just real quick scroll down to the bottom. There may be some others down there as well that are close to your heart. I ask all of my representatives, both senators and Congress people, please sign on to the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. See how many legislators we can get as a whole. That is a bipartisan caucus. Um, Reminds me, I've got to get back on Nancy Mace. I don't think she signed that one. I will talk about Nancy Mace in just a moment here. There is the legislation to expand veterans' access to medical marijuana. As I mentioned earlier, the Safe Banking Act, which is down on that lower list. Um, There's the cannabis consumption shouldn't deny citizenship. It's a bill relating to cannabis and immigration. Just because you have a simple cannabis arrest or been caught consuming cannabis, that shouldn't block your citizenship efforts. Um, Talking about delivery, allowing USPS to ship consumer vaporizer cartridges, batteries, etc. Gun rights. I know a lot of cannabis consumers are concerned about their Second Amendment rights. So that is the secure the Second Amendment rights of Americans in legal jurisdictions. Um, that Republican and prohibition bill I mentioned is down there. Also, there is a support the Marijuana Data Collection Act that is to basically start making data collection mandatory on all these medical beneficial uses. And also, I believe that has to do with legalizing and collecting data on things like hospitalizations, accidents. I'm not going to go on too much until I actually look at this. To collect and synthesize relevant data and to generate a formal report to Congress quantifying the impact of statewide marijuana legalization on matters specific to public health, safety, the economy, criminal justice, among other issues. Numerous published peer reviewed studies have assessed the impact of state regulated marijuana legalization on these issues, but despite the publication of these reports, a lack of consensus and acceptance of this data continues, particularly among members of Congress and the Department of Justice. Um, so it wants to, require and mandate accurate collection and reporting of this data. This bill requires data collection and study with regard to impact of state-regulated marijuana legalization on public health, safety, economy, and criminal justice. Requires the Secretary of HHS to coordinate with the DOJ and the DOL and states to the greatest extent possible, and direct the National Academy of Sciences (NAS) to publish a biannual study on the health, safety, economic effects of state legalized marijuana programs. Um, Instead of letting law enforcement officials like our dear friend Chief Mark Keel of SLED, who likes to use anecdotal evidence a lot. Oh, I had some sheriff from some legalized state tell me about all the problems they're having. No evidence, no backing of this information, but he likes to. That's how he likes to kind of um, sway public opinion. Is by just kind of shooting from the hip and not actually using facts. Um, so that is important information there as well. Backtrack again out of that. Last one, research direct the Veterans Administration to facilitate medical marijuana research. Um, what I don't see here at the moment, but I do know somewhat recently happened. I believe the DEA has now approved the licensing of three new growers besides the University of Mississippi to grow marijuana for the purposes of research. Um, I strongly believe, from what I've learned or heard, that the cannabis that they grow at the University of Mississippi is generally compared to, like, Mexican ditchweed, and not comparable to the dispensary quality that citizens are getting in legal states. Um, so that's a step forward. Now all I have to do is actually start approving the permits for the research. Um, all right, that's going to kind of call it for federal tonight. Again, that page is normal.org/act, ACT. I'm going to go ahead and close a whole bunch of tabs on my other screen here. And we will finally 25 minutes in or so into it, move on to state legislative news. Before I do that, I'm going to ask one more time. Anybody have any questions on what's going on federally, what we can do to sort of urge our legislators? Um, Give a shout out, type it in the chat, and or send us your questions later on if you come to them. Normal South Carolina at gmail.com. All right, let's go ahead and move forward with our state legislative news. Um, I think briefly at the beginning of the Zoom call, I mentioned that we are in the I don't know what we call this portion of it, the inactive legislative session. The state houses, all the legislators have gone back to their hometowns, their home counties, um, and the state house, both the Senate and the House, are they're going back and serving their local uh, voter base, um, and so there is no legislation moving forward at this time at the state house. They will reconvene the the second Tuesday of January, which is January 11th. Um, and I understand that one of the first things that's going to be on the Senate floor is going to be a debate on Senator Tom Davis's medical marijuana bill, the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act, S-150, Senate Bill S-150. And so that has been kind of I think, promise of, I don't know, as a Speaker of the Senate. There was somebody, and I don't believe it was the senator himself, Senator Davis, that made that comment statement. I don't want to call it a promise per se, although um, I think that was sort of the interpretation. Um, So that is like the next action that can happen legislatively at the state level. So we'll be focusing more on federal legislation over the next couple of months. As we get closer to fall, we'll start looking into some of that other, um, what's going to be coming up legislatively, refreshing everybody's mind on what's out there. As a good example, there are actually three medical marijuana bills out there. We know of S-150, which is Tom Davis's bill. We know about H-3361, which is Herb Kurzman's House bill. There is also H-3174, which is Democrat Todd Rutherford's bill. And again, why we don't know about it, that is called the Put Patients First Act, but it is democratically proposed legislation in a conservatively dominated House and Senate. So what happens in those cases, as far as I understand, it is the controlling party that has the chair seats of those particular committees that the bills get assigned to, and they can then choose to recognize or not recognize legislation that has been proposed to their committee, and choose to either move it forward or not, debate it or not. And so a lot of these bills that I might mention, the four decrim bills, the Put Patients First Act. Representative Rutherford also has a legalized possession of 28 grams or less for vets bill, H3202. There are some civil asset forfeiture bills. And what else do I have? Anything on the back page? There is an early release bill. Um, Again, most of these are proposed by Democratic legislators and probably will never leave their committee that they've been introduced to or assigned to. Um, Other state legislative news. I guess we can kind of consider it legislative news. I'm not sharing screen anymore, am I? I don't think so. Ah, that's what I'm looking for. That other little window. I guess we can kind of consider it legislative news because it has to do with elections and stuff like that, and not so much local chapter business. We had, as many of you know, uh, former congressman and candidate for governor Joe Cunningham come on our cannabis conversation this past Wednesday. Um, His campaign reached out to us a couple of weeks ago, gave us a little bit of a heads up that he was going to be making an announcement on Monday the 12th, and they were interested in having him come on our program on the 14th, Wednesday the 14th. We asked if we could do a little question and answer with him, gave him an opportunity to discuss his platform. If you go to uh, I'll find it for you real quick, only because I'm. If you go to his website, Joe for South Carolina, all one word, .com/marijuana, you will find his breakdown of his policy kind of there. Um, and on top of that, we had a busy week with on Monday after his press conference. There was downtown Charleston a um, Americans for Prosperity Criminal Justice Reform Roundtable. I took an opportunity to go down there because it's about 10 minutes from my home, a few minutes to walk from the parking garage, and got an opportunity to say hello to Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Um, a little bit later after the meeting had ended, I happened to come across Nancy being interviewed by a television interviewer, and there was another person standing there and a police officer because she has um, personal security right now because of some vandalism at her home a while back. Anyway, I had to sneak by them because I was looking for the restroom, and on my way coming back out, I hesitated in the hallway a little bit until they were done because I just didn't want to interrupt what they were doing. Um, and I'm kind of glad I did take a moment to hesitate because as I'm coming back out once they had finished the interview, Nancy May stops me and says, "Scott, I want to introduce you to." Oh, gosh, now I moved the card somewhere. Um, Her district director here in the Charleston district. And I started talking to him a little bit. Nancy Mace took off with they stepped to the side with the interviewer, and they're wrapping up their stuff. And this director had mentioned to me that he was pro cannabis, and of course, I bring up our cannabis conversation because that's what I do, saying that it'd be great to see what the congresswoman has to say about her marijuana policy, if she has policy at this point. And he didn't give me any specific per se information, and maybe I'm reading more into it than was actually said. So don't be running out and saying, "Oh, Scott told me this is going to happen." But I felt he alluded to um, she'd be happy to come on to our cannabis conversation. I don't know if it was if and or when she, sponsors some marijuana legislation. Uh, and so I don't know if he was alluding to that something that she's got in the works or not. So again, it's one of those things. I don't want to say now she does have some marijuana law reform um, opinions. Um, I have to go back and check our voter guide on what. I've communicated with her a little bit. I know she's for medical um, at the very least. Um, Now that was kind of an interesting and exciting for me here at the local. Although it's federally related, it's my Nancy Mace is actually my local representative here in South Carolina, um, and that was kind of fun. Another thing on Wednesday happened, as we all kind of talked about a little bit earlier, was that announcement at the federal level of the CAO Act, and with that announcement, I was contacted by two different television stations to ask to do an interview on NORML's position and or our thoughts on this new legislation and South Carolina moving forward with any kind of reform. Um, and so that was kind of exciting. And it was little clip I think I heard about. I think I even saw a clip on the one um, where they took like a small part of the Zoom conversation that we had. Um, so that was a lot of excitement for local. Last thing locally that was kind of happening, local state legislative, should I say, on Thursday, my local South Carolina House of Representatives rep, Spencer Wetmore, had a little meet and greet, town hall kind of, I guess you would call it, at a local park. It was an outdoor venue here, Sunrise Park on James Island in Charleston. Um, that was again sort of a little amusing to me because I had on my normal shirt, which on the back says real big, working to reform marijuana laws. But I was kind of facing what I saw three young ladies under a tree, a cooler. I figured it was who I was looking for. I did see a political sign near them and another one closer to where I was. So I knew it was kind of heading in the right direction. But I must have caught their attention because next thing I know, there's Spencer Wetmore kind of walking toward me going, Scott, Scott, is that you? And I'm like, That's kind of cool." And I was a little impressed that she knew my name until a little bit later when I realized that I had shared her event to a local group on Facebook that I have a James Island group on Facebook that she is part of, and I tagged her on it. And so she probably saw the tag, went, "Oh, who shared this?" Saw it was me, and then recognized me when I showed up. So it wasn't like I'm that memorable. I think it was just more so that she may have noticed it earlier that day that, oh, look, he shared my post. But anyway, again, getting a chance to talk to a state rep. And there's a great story with that one. So there I am talking with the state rep. Actually, I think she may have taken a few steps and was talking to another constituent. I'm sitting at this picnic table with, I think, 4 or 5 other people surrounding me. They're standing behind us, two of Ms. Wetmore's helpers, assistants, and uh, I'm kind of dominating the conversation. We're talking about cannabis and all kinds of aspects, medical, recreational, harm reduction, blah blah blah. As we're sitting there, kind of chatting, a mom and daughter came walking near our group. One of the helpers said, "Oh, are you here to join in the chat with the representative?" And it was a mom and a daughter, and the mom said, "No, no, we're just here to enjoy the park." And they took a seat on a little park bench, not very far from us. And and apparently, while they're sitting and enjoying the park, they're overhearing our conversation. And after a few minutes, and I don't know how long, because of course I'm just absorbed in the conversation, the mom got up from the bench, which was behind me. I didn't know it until she kind of came up around the side, and she says, "I don't mean to, to butt in or anything, and I just want to let you know. I mean, I didn't come here to join into your group, but I was sitting here with my daughter, overhearing the conversation, and I just want to say that my daughter is on the autism spectrum." And I think that she would really benefit if medical marijuana was legalized here in South Carolina. And I mean, I kind of, except I was sitting down, I almost took a little step back. I was really kind of thrilled by it. Her comment that it was to me very fortuitous that we sort of touched a mom who had a daughter who could benefit from cannabis medically. There just sort of happened to arrive, not intending to be part of the conversation, and right there in front of one of our local state representatives, making this statement, as a local citizen and a mom. So anyway, I thought that was again a big highlight of my week last night, working with trying to move advocacy for marijuana forward. Um, and again, that was an example of getting out and talking to my state rep. I did a little YouTube, or no, I think it was a Facebook live stream from there, one of those live Facebook lives through our NORML page, and described what I was doing, even described this little interaction with this mom. But my real plea on that was to, again, like I'll plea with all of you, anybody who's watching these videos later on, please contact your legislators. Go to scstate.gov. You can key in your name, your address. It'll tell you specifically who your representatives are. You can't just do it by state or by county or even by street, because gerrymandering has it so mixed up. You need to put in your address to actually find out who your specific legislators are. If you do that on the scstatehouse.gov page, um, it will give you your federal and your state level representation, and you can click in on their information and find out how to contact them. Or again, I'll bring it back up, go to norml.org/act. You can go to the interactive map that has to do with South Carolina. You can click on those different email and contact your legislator buttons from there and contact them through our actionnetworks.org system. Um, Last but not least, on talking kind of state legislative news, I do want to bring up, as I mentioned earlier, legislation session starts again January 11th. South Carolina NORML has our conference, what we're calling the Cannabis Convocation, scheduled for Saturday, January 15th in Columbia. It will be at Segra Park, a conference room that they have there in Segra Park. We have gotten a couple of commitments from a couple of other nonprofits. A good example, we have South Carolina ACLU participating with us. We have Americans for Prosperity participating with us. We have American Cannabis Nurses participating with us. Um, we have some possible. Oh, backtracking to the gubernatorial, we have some contacts with the other two governor candidates, Gary Vitor and Senator Mia McLeod. Matter of fact, I talked with Senator McLeod's people today. We are very early in the primary election process. The primary election for the governor won't take place until sometime next June 2022. And my comment to um, Senator McLeod's contact was that we probably want to look at having her on a little closer. We'll probably have Joe Cunningham back on closer, and we'll probably discuss again with candidate Gary Vitor about coming in closer to that June date. We're thinking probably, we'll start ramping things up in April would be perfect for our subject. Um, but March, April, as we get into next spring, after we, hit some of the early legislative process and start pushing and advocating for legislation that's already posted, then we'll sort of dip our toes into that primary stuff that'll be coming up as the legislative session ends at the beginning of June, end of May, beginning of June. Um, so anyway, keep an eye out for that. We're still kind of working on who we're going to have participating in the convention convocation. Like I say, we may have some candidates. We may I believe we have a South Carolina hemp farmer going to be participating with us. I have not confirmed yet. We're looking at some other state licensed processors, um, besides the farmers, extractors, retailers, to sort of describe what they've had to deal with and reasons they believe decriminalization would be beneficial. So all that stuff should be coming up in January, January 15th, Segra Park is where we tentatively have that scheduled at. If you have any thoughts of any nonprofits, we've reached out to a number of them, but if you have any nonprofits that you think might be a good um, compatible partner with a project like this, pushing towards educating our voters on the um, how to petition to get a referendum on a local ordinance to decrement local levels. Uh, and talking about, I guess I'll backtrack. This is kind of state legislative, but also kind of chapter local business. Um, we have been talking a lot over the past couple of years about the petition process and the voter initiated ballot reform. Um, I had a conversation last week with a someone from down in Louisiana who's been very prominent, very what's the word I'm looking for? Active in the decriminalization process in Louisiana. Their full statewide decrim goes into effect on August 1st. I don't know the details on their decrim. If it is, I'm assuming there is um, a ticketing type fine sort of concept. It's probably still a misdemeanor, but it's not a jailable offense, I'm assuming at this point. So anyway, talking to him and talking about our process, which was looking at a no fine, no time, no court cost, and then talking with a representative from another nonprofit, Marijuana Policy Project. We may be revamping our petitions a little bit. I mean, they've made some good points that maybe we should include into our local ordinance decrim some sort of penalty for juvenile use, whether it's a couple of hours of community service or something like that. Um, they recommend this type of stuff because you don't want to have the opposition going, Oh, you just want to have our high schooler kids running around free and freely smoking weed with no consequences, blah blah blah. So, if we can put in some sort of program where it's minor community service, to I guess the quote I was given was "Don't piss off the squares," and this is one of those things you put in there so that you don't piss off the squares with too liberal of a decrim ordinance. Uh, so in this conversation, I was asked by this fellow Kevin Collerman, "Who's your city council member?" And I'm like, on a Zoom call, and actually I was on a phone call with him. But had I been on a Zoom call, I would have been able to see my mouth kind of go agape and go like, ah. I don't know. I know my federal legislators. I know my state legislators. I don't know who represents me here at the city level in Charleston. So I actually had to go online and look and find out who my representative is. Now I know who this one person is. I have no clue where their position is on marijuana. So I do want to, I think, reach back out to two people. One is probably Joe Cunningham, because he's somewhat local, worked with local community legislators in the past, and this Spencer Wetmore, possibly even Nancy Mace. If any of these have a city council member here in Charleston that they believe might be um, receptive to working with me to proposing a decrim ordinance here in the in Charleston, instead of going through the process of me trying to collect 15,000 plus signatures and getting them all verified, and trying to get it on a ballot and then trying to do a whole get out the vote process. If we can get a city council member to sponsor the ordinance, uh, that would be the direction to go. I do know Attorney Johnny McCoy had proposed this to their city council or somebody in city council up in Myrtle Beach. I've heard nothing more if it's ever gone anywhere or not. And it's been a while, so I'm assuming it hasn't progressed anywhere, um, because that would be big news and I would probably hear about that. Um, anyway, that is kind of the direction that I'm going to be trying to move more locally here. I will still be more than happy to share with you all the South Carolina guide to voter reform through the ballot initiative process. If you need a copy of that, we have a PDF out there. Um, be more than happy to chat with anybody or support any groups that want to go out and in their community try and do a petition process. But I really think we're going to be better off to start going out and finding who these city council members are, who our representation is. You know, find out who they are in your community, see if we can find anybody somewhat receptive, and move forward that way. One of the things I think I'm a little, what's the word I'm looking for? I think I'm a little bit lucky about, is that at least five of the top 10 by population largest cities in the state are right here surrounding Charleston. Um, we've got a good chunk of the population right here surrounding Charleston that if we can go to, Mount Pleasant, Somerville, Hanahan, Goose Creek, city of Charleston, um, that's a couple of big ones right off the top. Um, I don't know if I have my list here. I usually have a little list of sort of what towns are almost by. Oh, I forgot North Charleston. North Charleston again is third largest here in the state. Um, Greenville, that's up in the upstate, so that's one we can't target. I can't target from this angle, and I think Greenville will be a real hard area to try that in. But again, right here in our little bit more receptive community, Charleston, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Somerville, Goose Creek, and let me go a few more down here. We have Hanahan's down there as well. Um, and are we still in the top 10 there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nah, hand it to hand, I think it's like 15, 16, somewhere down there. But anyway, We've got a couple of the larger cities here. I got to tell you, if we convinced them in Charleston and North Charleston and Mount Pleasant, if we got those three, I bet you we could figure our way to get up to Columbia and find somebody in Columbia to propose it there as well. And I'm not great with my South Carolina geography. Rock Hill isn't that far off, is it? Oh yeah, okay. That's way in the upstate too, just below Charlotte. Um, so yeah, we've got a couple of good sized cities here that I think we could make a good dent in. Um, and so anyway, oh crap! I just realized we're kind of up rolling up on 8 o'clock. So let me just real quick look at my agenda again one last time. Um, No committee reports to speak of. Upcoming events, I already kind of mentioned our January convocation. Earlier, I mentioned that you all may remember our monthly meetings every Wednesday. I'm going to kind of wrap it up by sharing with you also our every Wednesday, 7 p.m., South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation. Tomorrow night, the topic is going to be the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. We'll go in a little bit more of a deep dive on that. Um, if you need those documents that I shared earlier, I won't. You probably don't want to see the 163-page document, but if you want to see the 30-page document again and/or the link to the brief from NORML, let me know. But we'll be going through that a little bit more in detail tomorrow night. Last but not least, it's just been sort of scratching in the back of my mind. I want to start getting out and doing some in-person, face-to-face events. I mentioned to the board that I think we want to start maybe even our board just meeting the four of us in person locally here. We're all in the Charleston area, but I want to start getting out as well. I felt so good last week to actually get out to get to that criminal justice roundtable, to get out to and actually Tuesday I did go to a town hall kind of thing that Cunningham had at a local brewery. Uh, I got out on Thursday to, that Spencer thing. It's feeling good to get back out. I mean, I haven't gotten back out with our tent, with our pop up, with any festivals yet, but keep our eye out. If you have any thoughts on that, definitely share them. Otherwise, I clicked over to 8 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining me. Don't forget, we'll be back here on tomorrow night, 7 p.m. If you need to contact us, follow us on our social media: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, please, because if you ever meet these meetings, you can watch them there, or you can skip the meeting, watch them there, fast forward through some of my boring rambling. Um, that kind of stuff. And if you need to visit our website, normalsc.org and/or scnormal.org, navigate to the contact page and you can reach us through there. That's all I have for tonight. I want to thank you all for joining me, and we look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Let's change some marijuana laws. Have a good night, y'all. Bye bye.